If you are fascinated by the hidden power of soil life, subscribe to Botanical Bliss now. This channel uncovers gardening practices that have stood the test of centuries, and today's experiment reveals why ancient worm castings can transform container gardening in ways that seem almost unreal. What I discovered challenges everything most modern gardeners expect from soil amendments, and proves that sometimes the oldest methods are the most extraordinary. Why worm castings were revered long before modern fertilizers. Long before chemical fertilizers or packaged soil blends existed, farmers and gardeners understood that earthworms were nature's engineers. Ancient agricultural texts and oral traditions across Asia, Europe, and the Americas describe soil enriched with worm activity as living gold. Worm castings were collected, sometimes intentionally from active beds, and used in gardens, containers and fields to rejuvenate tired soil. The practice was never about volume or speed, but about quality. Worm castings are not merely decomposed matter. They are a concentrated package of microbial life, nutrients and soil structure all in one. In modern gardening, this is often overlooked. Soil amendments focus on nutrient content or water retention, ignoring the biological complexity that makes worm castings so potent. By testing them in controlled containers, I was able to isolate this effect and see how quickly ancient wisdom translates into results. So, container gardening really brings out the true power of worm castings. Containers, as many of us have found, are notoriously unforgiving. With such a limited soil volume, nutrients tend to deplete rapidly, moisture levels can swing up and down, and microbial populations often struggle to establish themselves. When we test worm castings in containers, we're actually removing the buffering capacity you get from garden soil, so their full effect becomes quite apparent. Even just small quantities can, rather remarkably, increase root density, improve leaf colour, and boost plant resilience. Plants in casting-enriched containers tend to grow faster and recover more quickly from drought or nutrient stress, which is honestly quite impressive. Unlike compost or chemical fertilizers, which, let's face it, often need repeated application or careful balance, worm castings create a stable microecosystem. The microorganisms brought in through the castings break down organic matter within the container, help regulate pH and improve soil structure. In essence, each container becomes a sort of miniature self-sustaining ecosystem all on its own. Now, let's talk a bit about how to prepare ancient-style worm castings for container use. Ancient gardeners, you see, didn't just scoop soil from worm-rich areas and call it a day. Instead, they cultivated it quite deliberately. They would layer organic matter, things like kitchen scraps, leaves and straw, to encourage worm activity, and then collect the castings only after the worms had thoroughly processed it. This method produced a dark, fine, crumbly material that's absolutely rich in microbes, humus and minerals. For modern container gardeners, a similar approach works, Start with a worm bin or actively worm-enriched compost. Allow the worms to process organic matter until it is uniform and crumbly, then separate the castings from the live worms. Use a small layer at the base of containers, or mix thoroughly with potting soil. Even 1 part casting to 3 parts soil can drastically change results. Why results often seem fake to first-time users. The first time I used ancient worm castings in containers, the growth and vitality were almost unbelievable. Seedlings that normally struggle in confined space flourished, root systems expanded rapidly, and leaves appeared deeper green with increased turgor. It looks unnatural because most gardeners are accustomed to soil that merely holds water and nutrients. Worm castings fundamentally alter the living chemistry of soil, creating conditions that allow plants to express their full genetic potential. This effect is compounded over time. Containers that receive regular casting enrichment rarely suffer nutrient deficiencies, waterlogging, or pest issues. Microbial communities maintain balance naturally, unlike chemical fertilizers which can create spikes and crashes. So, let's talk about how to integrate worm castings into ongoing container gardening. For long-term container gardening, worm castings should really be treated as a foundation rather than just a supplement. It's best to start with casting-rich soil when you're planting. Then, top dress with small amounts every few weeks, especially after heavy watering or during those active growth periods. But do be careful not to overload your containers, as excessive castings can, shift the pH temporarily or concentrate nutrients a bit too strongly. Pairing castings with organic mulches or cover crops in containers can, further enhance soil health. Even small amounts of shredded leaves or composted plant matter allow microbes to keep cycling nutrients, which really keeps the system active and self-regulating. Ancient gardeners, they understood this principle almost intuitively. It's the difference between a static sort of fertility and what we call living fertility. Why can container results actually inform garden-scale practices? Although containers tend to magnify effects because of their limited soil, the same principles, they do scale up. Worm castings improve structure, nutrient availability and microbial diversity, whether you're working with raised beds, terraces or field plots. Ancient farmers relied on these very effects to sustain productivity without any synthetic inputs. Modern gardeners, you see, can replicate this by integrating worm castings into the soil before planting and layering organic matter for continuous microbial activity. The lesson from testing ancient worm castings is honestly quite clear. Biology matters more than bulk, volume, or even the fertilizer content. Containers reveal the potency because, frankly, they are unforgiving, which makes success pretty much undeniable. Plants grown in casting-enriched soil grow faster, healthier, and become more resilient than those relying only on traditional compost or fertilizers. If this guide has changed how you think about soil, microbes, and container gardening, do subscribe to Botanical Bliss and share this with anyone seeking powerful, low-maintenance ways to restore soil naturally. The oldest soil-building techniques are often the most astonishing, and, their results continue to surprise even the most experienced gardeners.